Death of the Family Attention Span Test. This is the entire Batman Death of the Family storyline from start to finish in 18 minutes. A story where the Joker terrorizes the entire Bat family in the most sinister ways you could think of. After Batman finished dealing with the Court of Owls, his life only got more chaotic than it already was. Because one day while Commissioner Gordon was working a shift, the entire police department's power went out for reasons they couldn't explain. And moments later, upon seeing a strange-looking man standing in a nearby doorway, his heart sank to his stomach because that man was none other than the Joker. So Gordon pulled out his flashlight, demanding the clown to reveal himself, but Joker not only refused to cooperate, but began walking all over the station while snapping the necks of every officer he could get his hands on. When Batman finally arrived, he was met with a traumatized Jim Gordon surrounded by piles and piles of dead officers. Knowing that they couldn't waste any time though, they made their way to the evidence locker to see if Joker snagged anything, discovering that the cutout of his face was nowhere to be found. After that, the story cuts over to the Batcave with Bruce trying to figure out what the clown's motives were. He'd been missing for a whole year, but he knew they couldn't underestimate him because whatever he was up to, it was bad. Moments later, they were contacted by Nightwing, Tim, and Barbara, asking if the rumors about Joker being back were really true. So Bruce confirmed that they were true, only to be interrupted moments later by the Joker forcing a man to dress and act like him before killing him on a live TV broadcast. Later on, inside of a government facility, Commissioner Gordon put the entire police department on high alert, ordering the vast majority of them to watch over Gotham's mayor because the Joker stated he'd be dead by midnight. He'd then take the elevator to scan other parts of the building, only to be met by Batman gathering data on the mayor's blood to make sure it didn't have any Joker toxin. But he'd quickly realized something was wrong, so him and Gordon ran back to the mayor's office as fast as they could, discovering that instead of the mayor being poisoned, every single one of the officers watching him was poisoned. Upon taking a sample of the toxin, Bruce discovered it contained aspirin, chlorine, and ethane, which spelled out ACE if you only used the first letter in each word. So Bruce made his way back to where everything started, Ace Chemical, finding someone wearing Joker's notorious Red Hood suit. But he knew the person wearing the suit wasn't the Joker himself, so he began charging their way in an effort to take them down, only to be knocked into a giant container just moments later. That's when Harley took off the helmet, revealing it was actually her, but she wasn't sure she could go through with what the Joker was trying to get her to do to Bruce and the rest of the Bat family. The story then switches over to Alfred monitoring different parts of the manor before heading off to bed. But unfortunately, he was met by something terrifying. None other than a hammer-swinging Joker who had literally stapled his face back onto his head. When Alfred was attacked by a hammer-swinging Joker, Batman was completely unaware because thanks to Harley Quinn, he was stuck inside of a giant mixing container that was being flooded with the exact same chemicals that reinvented the Joker. And even though she didn't want to, Harley completely ignored his cries for help as he demanded her to set him free. So in a last-ditch effort to stay alive as the chemicals rose to the top, burning through his armor, Bruce equipped a face mask so he was able to breathe and then utilized a mini propulsion device to blast through the top of the container. After that, he went straight to the Batcave, immediately knowing that something was wrong because when he tried calling out to Alfred was unresponsive. So he started looking in different areas within the cave and in the manor, discovering a little cassette tape inside of some Joker-themed gift wrap. Upon listening to the message, he was overwhelmed with pain and frustration. The Joker expressed he was borrowing Bruce's butler for some sort of big celebration he was planning. And even worse than that, he also claimed to have burned Alfred's eyes out using ammonia. Out of concerns for Jim Gordon's safety, he would then pay him a visit, telling him that he was going to take him to a secret bunker because apparently he was next on the Joker's list. But then out of nowhere, Jim started bleeding out from his entire body while losing his balance and ability to stand. To no surprise, the Joker was the one behind it, who used a combination of various chemicals and blood thinner to trigger the inception. But eventually Bruce got it under control using a coagulant and then put him into a hospital. Later on, while talking to Nightwing, Bruce told him that Alfred being gone right now was one of the hardest things he ever had to go through. through, but they couldn't tell the other Bat family members about him being gone because they'd act out of emotion and possibly get themselves killed. Despite the Joker having the upper hand right now though, Bruce knew where he was headed next. The bridge nearby the Gotham Reservoir, because he was trying to reenact his early atrocities, and that was one of the first places they ever fought face to face. Upon his arrival, the Joker was there waiting for him with a hand full of surprises. The first being that he had killed a large group of innocent civilians by poisoning the reservoir's water and then throwing them inside, which resulted in Bruce attempting to bring him down, but unfortunately ended with him being unable to move because the Joker set up some sort of rope trap. After that, the Joker revealed his next surprises, claiming to know the secret identities of every single member in the Bat family and that soon enough they'd all be dead. But the kicker was that he wasn't gonna be the one who killed them. Instead, they were gonna meet their fate at the very hands of Batman himself. After the Joker confined Batman to a rope trap, he claimed knowing the secret identities of every single member in the Bat family, stating that he was going to force Bruce to kill them somehow during some sort of celebration. However, before being able to elaborate, he was interrupted by Harvey Bullock and the GCPD, demanding him not to move a muscle while also shining a spotlight on him from a helicopter. But unintimidated and confident as ever, the Joker simply called his men who were hiding in some nearby trees, giving them the green light to start firing off their missiles. As the bridge erupted with explosions and flames, Bruce grew so angry and desperate to end the chaos that he literally ripped straight through his confines, dove through a massive wall of flames, and then battered Joker onto the floor by clobbering the right side of his face with a fist. After that, while lifting him up in the air, he demanded to know where he was keeping Alfred, but it wouldn't result in any progress because while refusing to give him any information, Joker managed to stick him with some of his toxin, which not only made Bruce start losing consciousness, but also allowed the Joker to administer such a powerful kick that he went flying into the reservoir. Upon waking up in his bedroom later though, Bruce realized he was saved by the Bat family, who would tell him that he could finally be at peace because they were able to put the Joker away for good. But not even wanting to think about the Joker, Bruce asked them if they ever found Alfred and if he was doing okay, only to be greeted by the Joker himself, who had strapped Alfred's face onto his head. And as if things couldn't get any worse than they already were, Joker would quickly try ending his life by striking him down with an axe. At that point, Bruce realized he was having a nightmare. The Bat family did save him from drowning in the reservoir, but at the same time, they were all kind of angry, asking him if the Joker really knew their secret identities and confused as to why he didn't tell them that Alfred was missing. So Bruce exclaimed that he was afraid they'd give Joker the upper hand by letting their emotions get the best of them. But he was confident the Joker didn't know their secret identities and only took Alfred to help with the celebration he was planning because Alfred was regarded as the best butler in the business. After that, we see Bruce breaking into a house to talk to an Arkham employee who he figured out was actually working with the Joker. But the employee claimed it was against his will, that the Joker was threatening the families of every employee who worked at Arkham while simultaneously forcing them to turn Arkham into some sort of castle of nightmares that was dedicated to Batman. With this new information, Bruce immediately loaded into the Batmobile to figure out what was going on, and instead of calling for backup or informing the Bat family of where he was going to be, he was going into Arkham Asylum with nobody but himself. The Joker turned Arkham Asylum into a castle dedicated to Batman, and upon walking inside, Batman was met by guards dressed as him and Joker dancing inside of cages with electrically charged water. According to one of the guards, Joker had forced them to dance for days, and if they stopped, he was gonna kill them instantaneously. So Batman pressed an EMP button on his utility belt to shut off the power, but when that didn't work out, he was forced to think of something more clever, pulling out some mini absorbent gadgets and using them to soak up all the water. While making his way through the rest of the asylum though, he'd quickly realized that things were about to get a whole lot crazier, because after stepping inside of a dark hallway, he was greeted by a flaming horse that almost knocked him onto the ground, and upon dodging it, Joker commanded a massive group of Arkham inmates in Batman-themed armor to ignite their flaming swords and fill the room with Batman's blood. So Batman slammed a smoke bomb onto the ground and began taking them down one after another. But eventually he lost control of the fight because there was just way too many people clawing at him simultaneously. So in an effort to reposition himself, he pulled out his grappling gun, pulled himself up to the ceiling by hooking it onto a pipe, and then took out out a large group of the remaining inmates by flying down and tackling them to the ground. After that, the only inmate was one who was riding a horse, but he was charging right at Bruce in an effort to slice his head off. So Bruce literally punched the horse in the head with as much force as possible, causing the inmate to go flying off and allowing him to take the horse for himself to navigate the rest of the prison, which would turn out to be a pretty horrific experience because the Joker had a lot more in store for him, like a giant mural of some of Bruce's greatest tragedies painted on a wall of living bodies who were all chanting "Hail the Bat King." But even then, his tour of the castle was far from being over, because upon making his way up a set of spiral stairs, he was confronted by a bunch of different villains from his rogues gallery like Scarecrow, Clayface, and Mr. Freeze, who ended up turning his horse into a solid block of ice and then smashing it into tiny pieces. So Bruce quickly neutralized him with some sort of heating device, stole his freeze ray to render Clayface as a defenseless block of ice, and when Scarecrow tried sticking him with a giant cloud of fear toxin, he simply equipped a mouth guard and then forced Scarecrow to breathe in his own gas, which effectively knocked him unconscious. However, when he finally made it to the top to confront the Joker himself, he was met with something completely unexpected. Joker put together some sort of bat throne for him and invited even more of his rogues like Riddler, Penguin, and Two-Face. But what made it even more strange was a group of knockoff Justice League members that the Joker was about to sacrifice. The Joker wanted to kill a knockoff Justice League right in front of Batman, forcing them to grab a chainsaw that was rigged up to some live jumper cables one by one. And because the doorway into the room they were in was blocked off by a bunch of furniture, Batman was left with no other choice but to stand there and watch as the first victim stepped up to the plate to be electrocuted to death. And the Joker had no plans on slowing down after that, immediately calling for Wonder Woman to grab the chainsaw next. So Batman hurled his body at the door with everything he had, opening up just enough space for him to squeeze his way inside, and then ruin Joker's death contraption by cutting through the jumper cables utilizing a batarang. At that point, Penguin, Riddler, and Two-Face were pissed because it seemed like Batman had the upper hand. But the Joker wasn't fazed in the slightest because it turns out he still had one more trick up his sleeve, turning on some nearby TV screens and revealing he was holding the entire Bat family hostage, and unless Bruce cooperated with him by sitting down in his Bat throne, he promised he'd live the rest of his life without ever finding out what he did to them. So Bruce shamefully put his head down while walking over to the throne in question, and immediately upon sitting on it, the Joker shocked him with so many volts he started foaming out of his mouth until going unconscious. Later on, when he finally came back to his senses, he woke up at a dining table somewhere in Gotham's cave system where Tim, Damian, Jason, Barbara, and Grayson were all confined to their chairs with bags placed over their heads. So he tried busting out of his chair to take Joker down and set his family free, but Joker warned him that that wasn't in his best interest, stressing that there were flints strapped to the bottom of his chair legs that would ignite a bunch of gasoline he put in the air if he tried breaking free. So if he so little as stood up and left the table, the entire Bat family would burn to death right in front of his very eyes. After that, it was time to take the bags off their heads, but Joker didn't want to do the honors himself, so he brought out none other than a fully Jokerized Alfred to do the honors for him. And immediately upon doing so, Alfred pulled a nearby rope down, revealing that each of their heads was wrapped in bandages covered in blood. But unfortunately, the nightmare wasn't over just yet. There was still one thing left to do to confirm the Joker did what they thought he did. So Alfred went around the table, picking all the covers up on everyone's plates, revealing that Joker had severed their faces the exact way that his was severed. After the Joker revealed that he snatched the Bat family's faces, he literally started making fun of Bruce the exact same way you guys do in my comment section, expressing that the slippery slope excuse was total BS and that if he really wanted to, he could just kill him and him alone. But because he wouldn't, it proved that Bruce loved him more than he loved the actual Bat family, so he was the reason they no longer had their faces anymore. Nevertheless, as we move forward, the Joker would end up pulling out a match, asking Bruce if he wanted to do the honors of lighting the Bat family on fire because it was time for the final celebration. Unwilling to let Joker's antics get inside of his head though, Bruce stayed completely silent until being ready to make his move, igniting the fire himself upon busting out of his chair, but then quickly using a gadget from his utility belt to collapse the ceiling above them so the water in Gotham's cave safe system could extinguish the flames. After that, the Joker was pissed and immediately fled the scene. But because Bruce was only concerned with the Bat family's well-being, he decided to address them first, removing the blood-soaked bandages that were wrapped around Damian's face and realizing all of them were perfectly fine. It was all just a sick and twisted joke. Moments later though, Nightwing expressed that the job wasn't finished, encouraging Bruce to pursue the Joker while him and the Bat family watched over Alfred. But soon enough, they realized that they underestimated the Joker's cleverness, because in the event that his plans were foiled, he left behind a smoke bomb filled with Joker toxin. And immediately upon being triggered, the Bat family completely turned against each other and started tearing one another apart. Meanwhile, in the midst of being hunted down, the clown managed to catch Bruce by surprise, popping out of one of the crevices and then attempting to strike him down utilizing an axe. But proving he was more than prepared, Batman would stop the blade before it could touch him and then batter Joker so hard that his face almost flew off. But upon being backed into a corner, Joker desperately tried escaping by squirting him with some acid and then trying to jump off of a waterfall. Nevertheless, Bruce's cowl was able to soak up all the damage, and before the clown could get away, Bruce grabbed him by the wrist, revealing that he actually knew his real name and the man he was before becoming the Joker. But before being able to utter it to him, the Joker electrocuted him in the mouth with a mini shocking ring, causing Bruce to lose his grip and resulting in Joker falling down into the waterfall as his face flew off of his head. And eventually, despite their blood being tainted, the Bat family was able to restrain themselves from further hurting one another as the effects of the toxin slowly wore off of their bodies. So eventually everything went back to normal, with Bruce beating up homeless people at midnight, but unless they ever saw Joker again, they'd never know whether he was dead or alive. And sadly, that's where Death of the Family comes to an end, but if you want more stories like this in the future, let me know in the comments down below.